I want to address is the positioning of a student, which in the article The Making of a Bad Bad Boy by Kathleen Collins says positioning offers a way to describe the process through which people are placed in different identities, such as roles, categories, storylines, through culturally and historical situated interactions, and the ways which they respond by taking up the identity or by attempting to reposition themselves. So essentially what this is saying is that a student will be defined as a certain way by things that they cannot control. With this in mind, positioning can be a good or bad thing that follows a student all the way through their schooling. However, I want to address how positioning affects students who are marginalized, who got oppressed by the identities they were put into by things out of their control. Before I get to that, I want to look at another way to describe this phenomenon through looking at the continuum from troubling to troubled and how both of these ideas affect a student. In the article Troubled to Trouble, Hart talks about how mild punishments work for most students, but when a more challenging behavior occurs, more severe and frequent behaviors will occur, which makes the student be labeled or positioned as troubled, and then is more likely to be disciplined more often and frequent than someone who would have been labeled as good. The positioning of the student as a bad student and the policies around troubling behavior are what hurt many students of color. From both of these comes the social construction of behavior and disability. The social construction of behavior looks at how a student is seen by teachers and educators through how they were positioned by others, and essentially labeled as a good student. Furthermore, students are positioned as good and bad, and in What a Good Boy by Project Leonardo, you are positioned with an identity as good and bad student. One of the arguments made by them was shown through Nikki. He said, if you're a good listener, you get a start, even if you had trouble, as long as you're trying to listen better, he said. Bad listeners don't get as many starts as good listeners, but that's because they're bad listeners. This shows the neoliberal ideology of the school system in which a student should be a part of a push from mass education to teach students to be a good listener and morals to get ready for the workforce, which is shown in the article From the Neoliberal Policy to Neoliberal Pedagogy. With all these things combined, it allows for the implicit biases and stereotypes on students to label them as bad versus good. Going back to the idea brought by Hart in Trouble to Troubling article, it is seen that disciplinary policies have been at the forefront of dealing with students. The disciplinary and social construction of students has been a big reason for the misrepresentation of students of color in special education classes. In the terms of disability, every disability is very similar in numbers across race. There is no difference. However, with learning disabilities and emotional disturbances, there is a huge misrepresentation of students in color being positioned in one of those students. As well as that, when white children are assigned to special education, it is less restrictive programming than their minority counterparts. Also, the following data shown in cultural work and learning disabilities is driven by inconsistent methods of diagnosis, treatment, and funding, which makes the overall system difficult to describe and change. Following this, and What a Good Boy, it states that goodness is a mode through which disability occurs, including the over-evaluation of whiteness and under-evaluation of blackness within educational practices. They show that how the classroom management and disciplinary actions are more to push students of color to special education. The makeup of the positioning of a student in the continuum from troubling to trouble socially constructed students of color as bad students, bad listeners, and at times having a disability. These ideas are placed in our educational system and in many of our teachers and our minds. There are a few things that can disrupt these constructions of behavior and learning for students. The first is the idea of hope, which was introduced me through Duncan Andre's article. There are three good forms of hope that an educator can do within the umbrella idea of critical hope, and essentially what he argues is that there's an urban setting where a lot of kids are forgotten or put down. It is important to 1. Connect to your students and lives in their harsh realities of poor urban communities. 2. Humanize with our students above all else, and to acknowledge that their reaction is appropriate to what is happening around them in their lives, and to also to treat students' pain as it was like our pain and not someone else's. This allows for students to channel their pain and emotions rather than managing their emotions. With these ideas of hope, it will change the social construction of behavior around your students, and it will allow you as a teacher to see them as individual as your own. This will give your students opportunities to shine in not only in the classroom, but to also channel the best qualities from them. Speaking of channeling the best qualities of them in a commitment of warm manner by Franita, where it is shown that teachers who are black are able to channel the most out of their students who are black through different ways. The first being the teachers did not lower their standards in teaching in their students of color. Warm manner was explained as a term by using to describe teachers who provide a tough-minded, no-nonsense, structured, and disciplined classroom environment for kids whom society and psychology and physically abandoned. What this means is that teachers who were culturally responsive and because of the students appreciated the challenge and believed the teachers were culturally responsive and because of this the students appreciated the challenge and the belief in them to succeed. Both hope and warmed manner as teachers can shape their classroom management and disciplinary styles and teaching students of color and all students in general. My pedagogical philosophy has been evolving more and more throughout the semester, and I have decided the kind of teacher I want to be. and that I would be someone who has genuine care for my students, be patient with my students, and not be lazy to go the extra mile for them. With that being said, there are specific things that I want to do in my classroom to make sure that I am being the best teacher that I can be for my students. The first thing I want to address is having a belief in my identities. It is seen in the article Warm Demander Pedagogy, where it addresses the idea around warm demander for students. It's brought up that the warm demander was seen as an identity identified teachers who were successful with students of colors because the students believed that these teachers did not lower their standards and were willing to help them. However, this was seen for teachers and students who were black. Since I'm not black, I still think this idea is important to keep in mind. To truly accept the best out of all my students to catch up on my biases as they come into place in my teaching career. I will show the students that I believe that their growth in and outside of the classroom, as well as that I want to challenge my students, which is another idea where I get from the warm demand article. The article looks at how students who aren't black who are black don't get challenged in school, and then everyone just assumes that they can't succeed. In this article, it shows how teachers who are black challenge their students to succeed so that they are able to be pushed in a very well-structured classroom setting. I will apply this to me because I want to be a special education teacher and how much of society believes that people with disabilities can't succeed in the classroom or in life. And I want to challenge my students, and through that, I believe that it will benefit my students immensely, like it was shown in the article between teachers and students. Lastly, as a teacher, I always wanted to make the coursework needing to be done in the class related to my students, and I feel that this evolved through the Learnings by Nazar and Hand in the Courts classroom. When the study shows how much better the students did when comparing math to basketball, which is seen as a practice-linked identity, I feel that building relationships with them will help me find out what ways I can change the coursework to include their interests, and which in turn will allow me to have students thrive. This is my pedagogical philosophy and how it has evolved, and I feel that every day I'm able to keep evolving and adding more books to my bookshelves and knowledge towards the teaching. Thank you.